The day does not arrive with a sound. It opens slowly, almost shy, like light slipping through a narrow window. Most people do not notice this moment. They are already thinking ahead, already busy with noise that has not yet happened. But there is always a small space at the beginning of the day where nothing is demanded, only awareness lives there. In that quiet space, the heart often speaks first, not in words, but in feeling, a sense of weight or a soft unease, or sometimes a calm that feels fragile, as if it could disappear if touched too quickly. Have you ever noticed that? That before anything goes wrong, before anyone speaks, something inside already knows how the day might unfold? Silence has a presence of its own. It watches, it listens, it does not rush to explain itself. And yet, it carries meaning. In that silence, emotions begin to stir gently. Old memories, small expectations, unfinished thoughts from yesterday. None of them are loud, they simply wait. This is where many stories truly begin, not with action but with restraint, not with noise but with observation. The world outside is still undecided, nothing has been proven yet, and yet inside there is already a question forming. Will today be spent reacting or understanding? Sometimes the smallest moments carry the heaviest lessons. A glance that lingers too long, a word not yet spoken, a feeling of being unseen. They may seem harmless, but they settle quietly in the chest, not as anger, not yet. More like a gentle pressure, reminding us that something matters. They often move quickly through their days. They speak without waiting. They fill the air with certainty. To them, silence looks empty, unproductive, even weak. But silence is not empty. It is full of things that have not yet chosen a shape. There is a kind of wisdom that only appears when nothing interrupts it. It does not announce itself. It waits patiently, trusting that attention will eventually find it. And in the early moments of a day, that wisdom feels closer, almost reachable. You may feel it when you pause for just a second longer than usual, when you breathe without adjusting anything, when you let the moment stay exactly as it is. There is no need to decide anything yet. No need to respond, just noticing is enough. The calm at the start of a day can feel uncomfortable. Without distraction, emotions surface more clearly. Doubts, sensitivities. A quiet awareness of how easily peace can be disturbed. But this discomfort is not an enemy. It is an invitation to understand yourself before the world tries to define you. Some lessons do not come through struggle. They come through stillness. They arrive softly, asking for patience rather than strength. And often they ask a simple question, spoken without sound. What will you protect today? The answer does not need to come immediately. In fact, it rarely does. The power of this moment is not in resolution, but in presence, in allowing the day to begin without forcing meaning onto it, in letting silence lead just for a while. As the light grows stronger and the world begins to move, this quiet beginning fades. Conversations will start, expectations will appear, reactions will be invited. But something remains from this early stillness, a subtle grounding, a reminder that not everything needs to be met head-on. The day speaks softly at first, and those who listen carefully often carry that softness with them, even when the world grows loud. As the day moves forward, something subtle begins to change. The quiet from earlier does not disappear, but it becomes harder to hear. Sounds collect around it, expectations drift closer, and inside a feeling begins to form, one that is not quite pain, not quite anger, but something heavier than both. It is the feeling of holding back. There are moments when words rise quickly, almost on their own. They press against the chest, asking to be released. A response forms before it is needed. An explanation prepares itself even when no one has asked, and in that moment, silence becomes effort. It is no longer natural. It becomes a choice. Holding back does not feel noble at first. It feels tense. The body notices it. The breath becomes shorter. The shoulders tighten slightly. The mind begins to circle the same thoughts again and again. Why stay quiet? Why not say what feels true? Why let things remain unresolved? They may speak casually without care, or they may say nothing at all, leaving space for misunderstanding to grow. And still the silence remains inside, pressing gently but firmly, not as submission, but as restraint, not as fear, but as awareness. There is discomfort in this kind of silence. It asks the heart to sit with uncertainty, to accept that clarity does not always arrive immediately, to allow emotions to exist without acting on them. This is not easy. The mind often wants relief, and words promise that relief even when they cannot truly deliver it. In these moments, silence can feel lonely, as if you are carrying something no one else can see. Others move freely, unburdened by reflection. They react quickly and feel light afterward. Meanwhile, you remain still, feeling the weight of what was not said. But this weight is not empty. It is shaped by care, by self-respect, by the quiet understanding that not every truth needs to be spoken in every moment, that some feelings need time to settle before they can be understood. The discomfort grows when silence is misunderstood, when it is seen as distance or indifference or weakness, when they expect a response and none arrives, when the pause stretches longer than what feels socially acceptable. In those moments, doubt may enter. Am I owing the right thing? Or am I simply avoiding something? Yet there is a difference between avoidance and patience. Avoidance runs from feeling. Patience stays with it. Patience allows the discomfort to exist without rushing it away. It watches the emotion, noticing how it shifts, how it softens, how it reveals its deeper shape over time. Silence asks for emotional discipline. Not the kind that denies feeling, but the kind that holds it carefully, like carrying water in open hands, knowing that sudden movement will only cause it to spill. The effort is real, the strain is real, but so is the intention. In the quiet pressure of holding back, something important begins to happen. The emotion slows down, it loses some of its urgency. What once felt overwhelming becomes clearer. The need to react fades, replaced by a deeper understanding of what truly matters. This is the hidden work of silence. It is not passive. It is deeply active, even when nothing can be seen from the outside. It requires strength that does not announce itself, strength that does not seek recognition. They may never know the effort it takes. They may never notice the restraint, or the care, or the inner struggle. And that is part of the weight as well. To hold something quietly, without assurance that it will ever be understood. But within this quiet effort, a subtle shift begins. The discomfort no longer feels like pressure alone. It starts to feel like grounding, like standing firmly in one place, Lo, the world moves around you. Holding back becomes less about suppression and more about choice, about deciding when a response adds meaning and when silence preserves peace. And in that realization, the weight becomes lighter, even as it remains. Not everything that rises within needs to be released. Some things are meant to be held, observed, and understood first. And in learning to carry that weight, something steady begins to form inside. There is a particular kind of silence that forms when others begin to notice it. At first it is small, almost invisible, but over time it becomes something they respond to, even if they do not fully understand it. And when they do not understand, they begin to fill the space with their own meaning. They may look at you differently. A pause where a reaction was expected can feel strange to them. A calm expression where emotion was anticipated can feel unsettling. And slowly, assumptions begin to form. Quiet ones at first, then louder in their certainty. They may think the silence means agreement, or distance, or disinterest. Some may believe it hides something sharp, something unspoken. Others may assume it means nothing at all. The truth rarely crosses their minds, because silence does not explain itself. Being misunderstood carries its own weight. It settles differently than simple discomfort. It is not just the strain of holding back, but the awareness that your inner world and their perception no longer align. You see one thin, Gee, they see another. And the space between those two views can feel vast. There are moments when this misunderstanding feels unfair, when it seems easier to speak, to correct the image, to clarify the intention. A few words could smooth the edges. A simple explanation could restore balance. And yet, something deeper hesitates. Not every misunderstanding needs correction. Some are reflections of where others are standing, not of who you are. Silence begins to teach this lesson slowly without force. It asks you to notice where the urge to explain comes from. Is it for truth or for comfort? They may speak about you in small ways, not openly, but in tone, in implication, in the way their attention shifts. None of it is loud enough to confront directly, yet all of it is felt. Silence hears these things clearly. Even when nothing is said out loud, there is vulnerability in remaining quiet while being misunderstood. It requires trust in something unseen, trust that identity is not built on constant explanation, trust that meaning does not always need defense. This kind of trust is fragile at first, easily shaken by doubt. The mind begins to question itself. Maybe I should have said more. Maybe silence made things worse. Maybe they now believe something untrue. These thoughts arrive gently, one after another, testing the resolve to remain still. But in observing these thoughts, another understanding begins to surface. Being understood by everyone is not possible. Even words, carefully chosen, are often heard through filters you cannot control. Silence simply makes this truth more visible. There is a quiet strength in allowing others to hold their interpretations without trying to shape them. It does not mean accepting falsehood as truth. It means recognizing the limits of control. The peace that comes from letting go of how you are perceived is subtle but real. They may never ask for clarity, or they may ask in ways that do not feel safe to answer. Silence becomes a boundary then, a way of protecting what feels private, what feels unfinished, what feels sacred in its uncertainty. Being misunderstood sharpens awareness. It reveals which connections are rooted in surface understanding and which can tolerate depth without explanation. Some bonds weaken, others remain unchanged. And in that sorting, clarity emerges quietly. The experience leaves a mark, not of bitterness, but of discernment. You begin to sense when explanation is necessary and when it is simply noise, when words would heal and when they would only satisfy expectation. Silence does not promise to be understood. It offers something else instead, the freedom to remain aligned with yourself, even when others are unsure. The calm that comes from knowing that meaning does not always need an audience. And in the stillness of being misunderstood, something steady grows, a quiet acceptance, a deeper self-trust, the understanding that not all clarity comes from speaking and not all tea. Truth requires agreement to exist. There comes a moment, often unnoticed, when something shifts inside. It does not arrive as a sudden answer or a clear decision. It arrives quietly, like a small truth settling into place. The noise around you may remain the same, but the way you hear it begins to change. This moment is not dramatic. Nothing announces it. You may still be sitting in uncertainty, still holding back, still feeling the weight of silence, and yet, within that stillness, understanding begins to take shape. Not as a conclusion, but as recognition. You begin to see that silence is not something you are enduring. It is something you are learning from. The discomfort, the misunderstandings, the unanswered questions all point towards something deeper. They are not obstacles, they are mirrors. In the quiet, patterns become visible. You notice how quickly emotions rise and how quickly they fade when left untouched. You notice how often the urge to speak is driven by a need to be seen, or validated, or relieved of tension, and you begin to ask gently, is that need truly urgent? This realization does not judge, it observes, it allows space for compassion, both for yourself and for others. They speak from their own restlessness. You remain quiet not out of superiority, but out of awareness. The difference is subtle but meaningful. A small truth reveals itself then. Not every moment is asking for expression. Some moments are asking for presence. Some feelings want to be heard internally before they are shared outwardly. And some thoughts, when spoken too soon, lose their wisdom. You begin to sense that silence is not absence, but preparation. A pause where clarity is allowed to mature. Like fruit ripening slowly, unseen. Rushing it would only change its taste. There is relief in this understanding. The pressure to respond eases, the need to defend softens. You realize that you do not owe immediate reactions to the world. Time is not working against you, it is working with you. This insight brings a quiet steadiness. You feel less pulled by every glance or comment, less affected by how they interpret your calm. The inner world becomes more spacious, less crowded by imagined expectations. You also begin to see yourself more clearly. Without constant reaction, emotions reveal their true size. Some that once felt overwhelming shrink when given time. Others reveal a deeper source, something older and more tender beneath the surface. Silence allows this honesty. It does not rush to fix or explain. It simply stays. And in staying, it teaches you what truly deserves your energy. The realization continues to unfold gently. You notice that speaking less does not make you smaller. If anything, it creates room for something stronger to emerge. A grounded sense of self that does not depend on immediate affirmation. They may still misunderstand. They may still project their assumptions. But this no longer feels personal. You see it as part of the human need to fill silence with certainty, and you no longer feel responsible for managing that need. There is a quiet confidence in this shift, not the kind that seeks recognition, but the kind that feels settled. You are no longer waiting for the right moment to speak, because you understand that silence itself is already doing important work. This small truth does not close the story. It opens it. It changes how you move through the next moments, how you listen, how you wait. The world feels less urgent, more spacious. In this realization, silence becomes a companion rather than a burden, a steady presence that reminds you to slow down, to observe, to trust what unfolds naturally. And in that trust, something within begins to rest. The night grows quieter. The mind softens, and the understanding remains simple and steady. Not everything needs to be answered. Some things are meant to be understood first, in the quiet where truth speaks softly. There is a moment when silence stops feeling like something that happens to you and begins to feel like something you choose. It is not announced. It does not arrive with certainty. It shows itself quietly in a pause that lasts just a little longer than before. The urge to react still appears. It always does. A look, a word, a tone can stir emotion without warning. The body recognizes it first, a tightening, a quickening, the familiar pull toward response, but now there is space between the feeling and the action. In that space, choice lives. You notice the impulse without following it. You let it rise and you let it remain. This is not suppression. It is attention. You are watching your own reaction with patience, allowing it to reveal what it truly is. Often, the reaction wants to protect something fragile. Pride, fear, the need to be understood. When you see this clearly, the urgency softens. The reaction loses some of its force. It becomes a signal rather than a command. Choosing silence in these moments feels different than before. It is no longer heavy with doubt. It carries intention. You are not silent because you are unsure. You are silent because you are clear. They may continue as they are, speaking quickly, filling the air, expecting a response that does not come. And while the outer scene remains unchanged, the inner experience shifts. There is a quiet dignity in not reacting, not the kind that seeks to appear strong, but the kind that knows its own boundaries. You begin to sense that every reaction costs something: energy, peace, self-respect. And not every moment is worth that cost. Silence becomes a form of care. Care for your inner balance. Care for what feels meaningful. You realize that reacting immediately often serves the moment, but silence serves the long view. This choice brings a different kind of strength, one that does not push outward, one that holds steady inward. It is subtle, but it changes how you stand, how you listen, how you wait. You may notice that way, and you do not react. The moment continues without you. The tension passes. The words lose their sharpness. What once felt urgent fades into something ordinary, and you remain untouched. This does not mean nothing affects you. It means you decide what deserves access. Silence becomes a gate, not a wall. It allows some things through and gently keeps others out. There is self-respect in this restraint, not the kind that needs acknowledgement, but the kind that is felt quietly. You honor your own emotional space by not offering it freely to every provocation. They may interpret your calm in many ways. Some may feel unsettled by it. Others may mistake it for distance. But their interpretation no longer guides your response. You understand now that your silence is not for them. It is for you. In choosing not to react, you learn something important about power. True power does not rush. It does not argue for its place. It remains centered, even when the world moves around it. This choice does not make life silent. It makes it clearer. You begin to hear what matters beneath the noise. You notice your own values emerging more distinctly. What you stand for becomes less about words and more about presence. There is relief in this clarity. You are no longer pulled into every exchange. You conserve your voice for moments that align with your truth. And when you do speak, the words carry more weight because they are chosen, not forced. Silence becomes a quiet declaration, not spo. Ken aloud, but deeply felt. It says, "I will not give my energy away without care. I will not let every moment define me." And as the night deepens, this understanding settles gently. The choice to remain silent when reaction once felt automatic becomes a steady companion, a reminder that inner power often reveals itself not through action, but through restraint. Growth rarely announces itself. It does not arrive with clear markers or sudden change. More often it happens quietly in the background, shaped by small choices repeated over time. Choosing restraint is one of those quiet choices. At first it feels like nothing is happening. The world looks the same. They continue as before. Conversations rise and fall. Situations unfold with the same familiar patterns. And yet, beneath the surface, something steady is being formed. Each time you pause instead of reacting, something strengthens inside. Not visibly, but deeply, like roots growing in darkness, unseen but essential. Emotional discipline begins to take shape, not as control, but as understanding. You start to notice how restraint changes your inner rhythm. The mind becomes less crowded. Thoughts pass through without staying as long. Emotions still appear, but they do not linger with the same intensity. They come, they speak, and then they leave. There is space now, space to observe without judgment, space to feel without being overwhelmed, space to respond later or not at all. This space is where growth lives. Hey may not notice these changes. From the outside, nothing seems different. Silence looks the same whether it is empty or full. But inside, clarity is forming slowly, patiently. Restraint teaches patience, not as waiting, but as trust. Trust that clarity arrives when it is ready. Trust that not everything needs immediate attention. Trust that peace is built through consistency, not reaction. You begin to see situations differently. What once felt personal now feels distant, not because you care less, but because you see more. You understand that much of what people express comes from their own unrest. Silence allows you to witness this without absorbing it. There is compassion in this distance, a gentle understanding that not everything is meant to be carried. Restraint protects you from taking on emotions that are not yours to hold. Over time, this practice changes your sense of self. You feel less defined by external moments. Your identity becomes rooted in something steadier. You are no longer shaped by every interaction, every misunderstanding, every passing emotion. Growth through restraint feels quiet, almost invisible. There are no dramatic shifts, no sudden confidence, just a gradual sense of balance, a feeling of being anchored even when circumstances feel uncertain. You may notice this growth in small ways, how quickly you recover from tension, how easily you let go of words left unsaid, how calm returns without effort. These are signs of something maturing within. They may still test your patience. Situations may still arise that invite reaction, but the invitation feels different now. You are no longer pulled by it. You choose whether to step forward or remain still. Restraint sharpens discernment. You begin to sense which moments deserve engagement and which do not. Silence becomes selective, intentional. It is no longer about avoidance, but alignment. This growth does not harden you. It softens you in a different way. You become less defensive, less reactive, more present. You listen more deeply, not just to others, but to yourself. The quiet discipline of restraint builds resilience, not the kind that resists everything, but the kind that adapts calmly. You are able to remain open without being unprotected. There is humility in this process. You see your own patterns clearly. You recognize past reactions that once felt necessary, but now feel unnecessary. This awareness does not bring regret. It brings understanding. As the night deepens, this growth feels like a steady warmth. Not excitement, not pride, just a sense of inner strength that does not need to prove itself. Restraint has shaped you gently over time, without force, without struggle. And in that shaping, something lasting has formed. A quiet capacity to remain centered no matter what unfolds around you. Growth rarely announces itself. It does not arrive with clear markers or sudden change. More often, it happens quietly, in the background, shaped by small choices repeated over time. Choosing restraint is one of those quiet choices. At first, it feels like nothing is happening. The world looks the same. They continue as before. Conversations rise and fall. Situations unfold with the same familiar patterns. And yet, beneath the surface, something steady is being formed. Each time you pause instead of reacting, something strengthens inside. Not visibly, but deeply. Like roots growing in darkness, unseen but essential. Emotional discipline begins to take shape, not as control, but as understanding. You start to notice how restraint changes your inner rhythm. The mind becomes less crowded. Thoughts pass through without staying as long. Emotions still appear, but they do not linger with the same intensity. They come, they speak, and then they leave. There is space now. Space to observe without judgment. Space to feel without being overwhelmed. Space to respond later or not at all. This space is where growth lives. They may not notice these changes. From the outside, nothing seems different. Silence looks the same whether it is empty or full. But inside, clarity is forming slowly, patiently. Restraint teaches patience not as waiting but as trust. Trust that clarity arrives when it is ready. Trust that not everything needs immediate attention. Trust that peace is built through consistency, not reaction. You begin to see situations differently. What once felt personal now feels distant. Not because you care less, but because you see more. You understand that much of what people express comes from their own unrest. Silence allows you to witness this without absorbing it. There is compassion in this distance. A gentle understanding that not everything is meant to be carried. Restraint protects you from taking on emotions that are not yours to hold. Over time, this practice changes your sense of self. You feel less defined by external moments. Your identity becomes rooted in something steadier. You are no longer shaped by every interaction, every misunderstanding, every passing emotion. Growth through restraint feels quiet, almost invisible. There are no dramatic shifts, no sudden confidence, just a gradual sense of balance, a feeling of being anchored even when circumstances feel uncertain. You may notice this growth in small ways. How quickly you recover from tension, how easily you let go of words left unsaid, how calm returns without effort. These are signs of something maturing within. They may still test your patience, situations may still arise that invite reaction, but the invitation feels different now. You are no longer pulled by it. You choose whether to step forward or remain still. Restraint sharpens discernment. You begin to sense which moments deserve engagement and which do not. Silence becomes selective, intentional. It is no longer about avoidance, but alignment. This growth does not harden you. It softens you in a different way. You become less defensive, less reactive, more present. You listen more deeply, not just to others, but to yourself. The quiet discipline of restraint builds resilience, not the kind that resists everything, but the kind that adapts calmly. You are able to remain open without being unprotected. There is humility in this process. You see your own patterns clearly. You recognize past reactions that once felt necessary but now feel unnecessary. This awareness does not bring regret, it brings understanding. As the night deepens, this growth feels like a steady warmth. Not excitement, not pride, just a sense of inner strength that does not need to prove itself. Restraint has shaped you gently, over time, without force, without struggle. And in that shaping, something lasting has formed. A quiet capacity to remain centered, no matter what unfolds around you. There comes a point when the noise no longer reaches you in the same way. It still exists. Voices still rise. Opinions still move through the air, but their weight changes. What once felt heavy now feels distant, like sound heard through a closed window. They continue as they always have, speaking quickly, reacting freely, filling silence as soon as it appears. Nothing about their behavior has shifted, and yet, something important has changed within you. The noise has lost its power. It does not mean the words are kinder or the situations easier. It means they no longer enter the same place inside you. The space where tension once gathered is quieter now. Not P, but steady. You notice this most clearly in moments that once would have unsettled you. A comment that once lingered now passes quickly. A tone that once stirred doubt now fades without leaving a mark. The reaction still begins, but it does not complete its journey. There is relief in this, not excitement, just ease. A sense that you are no longer responsible for every sound around you. The world can speak, but you decide how deeply it is heard. Silence plays a different role now. It is no longer something you retreat into. It stands calmly between you and the noise like a gentle filter. What matters comes through. What does not remains outside. They may notice your calm, or they may not. Some may try to draw you back into reaction, into explanation, into response. Others may simply continue without awareness. Either way, the pull feels weaker. You begin to understand that much of what once felt urgent was only loud, not important. The difference becomes clear through experience, not thought. The body relaxes more easily. The breath settles without effort. There is a quiet confidence in this shift, not the kind that seeks recognition, but the kind that feels settled. You are no longer bracing yourself against the world. You are standing within yourself. The noise still arrives, but it no longer stays. It passes through without attachment. You observe it, acknowledge it, and let it go. This ability does not come from detachment, but from grounding. You are not an you are present. And presence changes how sound is received. What once overwhelmed now simply informs. In this calm, you notice something else. Without constant noise, your inner voice becomes clearer, not louder, but more distinct. You hear your own thoughts without interruption. Your values speak softly, but consistently. This clarity feels natural, not forced, not earned through struggle. It feels like returning to something that was always there, waiting beneath the surface. They may still misunderstand your silence. They may still project meaning onto your calm. But this no longer feels threatening. You are not trying to be understood by everyone. You are simply being. The loss of noise brings space. And in that space, peace settles without announcement. It does not ask to be defended. It does not need explanation. It simply exists. You move through moments with less friction. Decisions come more easily. Boundaries feel clearer. Not because you push them outward, but because you recognize them inwardly. The world remains loud. It always will. But you no longer measure yourself against it. The comparison fades. The urgency dissolves. As night falls, this calm feels steady, not fragile, not temporary. It rests within you, unaffected by the sounds outside. The noise has not disappeared. It has simply lost its influence. And in that quiet victory, you remain grounded, present, and at ease, listening only to what truly matters. The day begins to slow, almost with you tasking. Light softens. Sounds grow fewer. What once felt important loses its sharp edges, and the world gently releases its grip. Nothing dramatic happens. There is no final moment to mark, just a quiet settling. You notice how calm now feels familiar. Not something you reach for, but something that is already there. It does not depend on silence around you. It does not disappear when voices return. It rests deeper than that. There is strength in this calm, but it does not announce itself. It does not need to be proven. It does not lean outward. It remains steady, like a quiet flame that does not flicker when the air moves. You reflect on how much has changed without effort. Not through force or resistance, but through patience, through allowing moments to pass without grasping them, through learning that not every feeling needs a response to be honored. Silence has taught you something simple and enduring, that peace is not found by controlling the world, but by understanding your place within it. That inner power does not rise from speaking louder, but from knowing when nothing needs to be said. They are still there, somewhere beyond the edge of this calm. Speaking, reacting, moving as they always have, but they no longer shape the center of your experience. Their presence does not disturb the quiet you carry. There is no resentment here, no distance born of bitterness, only acceptance, the understanding that everyone moves at their own pace, guided by their own eyes. And you no longer feel the need to follow. The stillness feels honest. It allows you to sit with yourself without distraction, without judgment. You are not trying to improve anything, not trying to fix what is past. You are simply present. In this presence, self-respect settles naturally, not as a rule or a posture, but as a feeling. You recognize your own boundaries without naming them. You sense what you will carry forward and what you will leave behind. Nothing feels urgent. Tomorrow does not demand attention yet. The past no longer calls for explanation. This moment is enough. You breathe, and the breath feels complete, unforced, whole. There is no tension waiting beneath it, just quiet awareness. Silence remains your companion, but it is no longer something you hold tightly. It walks beside you, steady and unassuming. It does not isolate you from the world. It allows you to move through it without losing yourself. There is clarity in this simplicity. Life does not feel smaller without constant reaction. It feels wider, more spacious. There is room to observe, to listen, to choose. You understand now that restraint was never about denial. It was about respect. Respect for your inner life. Respect for time. respect for the fact that meaning unfolds slowly. As night deepens, the calm grows softer, not heavier. It does not press inward. It supports. It allows rest. You do not feel the need to explain this peace. It belongs to you quietly. It does not require witnesses. The world can continue as it wishes. You remain grounded, aware, and at ease. Silence has done its work, not by changing everything around you, but by steadying everything within you. And in that steadiness, nothing more is needed.